Hey YouTube. I really want to introduce you to a friend of mine, but before I do, just out of curiosity, what do you figure is the level of overlap between gambling and card magic? Probably more than you'd think, but less than you'd hope for. The overlap is at its strongest and likely most popular when we talk about sleight of hand, because gambling sleight of hand and card magic both utilize the exact same tools, and in some cases the exact same choreography. But the similarities kind of end there. It's kind of like cousins that grew up on opposite ends of the country. They might have similar relatives and even the same last name, but they have very different life experiences. And the differences are most prominent in three forms: context, credit, and consequences. For context, let's talk about the palming of cards, because it'll apply to both. Let's take a random scenario. Let's say for some reason I'm a card magician, and I'm giving a performance. My question is, when is it appropriate during that scenario to palm a card? And the truth is, whenever I feel like it. I am in control of the performance scenario, and I could set up the routine to palm whenever it is most convenient and least suspicious for me to do so. More importantly, I could reintroduce that card whenever I feel like, because I don't have to have anyone on that side of the stage hold me accountable for anything that's happening on my side. But the answers become a lot less straightforward if we're talking about gambling sleight of hand, because that style is very much confined and constricted by the type of games that you're applying it to, and the rules of play for each of those games. So if you were playing poker, when is it best to palm a card in the middle of a game? Well, if you have a moral compass, the answer is never. But let's assume that you're a ne'er-do-well who has zero problem stealing money from people. In that particular scenario, I have a whole bunch of other questions for you, like, what type of poker are you playing? Where are you playing? How full is the table? Where are you seated at the table? What are the angles of visibility? Are you playing with a partner? Are you palming off the deck or just the hand that you're dealt? Do you even get to touch the cards, or are the cards only ever dealt to you? How many cards are actually dealt to you? Can you pick up the cards, or do they have to stay on the table? Would the palming of cards offer any advantage over the risk that you're taking in that particular scenario? All of those questions and more are relevant to the first question of, when should I palm a card in the middle of a poker game? And none of it goes over what you should do with the card once you've got it. So no, not as straightforward. The next major difference is credit. And in the card magic world, crediting is king, both personally and philosophically. Personally, when you give credit, it's how you show respect to the people that came before you. But when you get credit, when your name gets attached to something, that's one of the ways that you establish yourself as someone that's worthwhile in the magic world. But philosophically speaking, it's how we establish a provenance for the ideas that we've come to care about in card magic. And it's why we tend to attach the names of the creators to their creations. So you get things like the Marlowe Tilt, or the Zero Shuffle, or the Lapal Spread, or the Arthur Finley Steal. In each case, we assign the name to the creation because you were first, you were famous, or you were fruitful. But in the gambling world, where sleight of hand is concerned, if you're on the wrong side of the law with this, the last thing that you would want to do is take credit for the interesting things that you do in the middle of a game. And you certainly don't want any of it named after you. Because, let's be honest, notoriety is the enemy. It's bad for business. How many games do you think you're going to be invited to if the whole world knows that you're the best bottom dealer this side of the Mississippi? Not only that, they even named one after you. Ugh. But probably the most important difference is the idea of consequences. What happens if you get caught? As a magician, if I'm giving a performance to an audience, really the only major thing that I've got on the line is my personal reputation for being a sleight of hand expert. So if someone in the audience happens to catch me in the act of something, really the only thing that took a hit is that reputation. I still go home at the end of the night happy and healthy to my family. But if you're a card cheat and you get caught, what you were doing was theft, and some people take that very personally, which means no one's going to be happy. You may not stay healthy for long, and home is likely not your next destination. And depending on what you were doing, you may never go home again. Now, I realize that that last point might be a bit morbid, but it is the truth. And it helps to dispel this strange notion that card magicians and card cheaters are doing the exact same thing. They are not. The instrument might be the same, the songs might even sound similar, but the truth is, one of them is playing that bad boy in the minor key. I'll be honest, these lessons were a bit tough to learn, and I learned them from a person that I never expected to become friends with. His name is Ron Conley, and Ron is not a magician. Ron is a gambling protection expert. The nice part about that title is it's pretty self-explanatory. But to add just a touch of detail, what that means is that Ron worked for, advised, and trained casinos and their staff in the knowledge and procedures that would keep them from getting robbed. But one of the things that set him apart and made him stand out from a number of his contemporaries is that before Ron was ever on the protection side, Ron was a professional gambler. And when I say professional, I don't mean earned a couple $100s while playing in Vegas once a month. I mean, that was how he paid for his existence, including his mortgage and his car payments. So, when he spoke to casinos, he spoke with the authority of a person who had lived on the other side of their tables for decades, and as such made him one of the foremost authorities on poker here in California before he retired. But to this day, remains one of the foremost authorities on gambling protection in general, just based on all of that experience. I visited him every single weekend for years, and I would bribe him with In-N-Out burgers, and he would then show me everything that I was doing wrong in my card handling. But nearly everything that I know about stock controls, about brief work, about hand mucking, I learned from Ron, so I owe him a great deal. Now, here's the thing. Ron doesn't do YouTube, and he sure as hell doesn't do tutorials. He's going to be on this channel as a personal favor to me, but instead of trying to shove him on here and have you guys learn from him at breakneck speed while taking very little away from the experience, we're going to do something a little different. See, here's the thing, is that Ron has been handling a deck of cards longer than I've been alive, but it's been from the gambling world, not the magic world. So when I went to his house to record the couple of things that he wanted to share with you, it ended up being more on the advanced side of the spectrum. But that makes sense. This guy has lived and breathed gambling sleight of hand for 5 decades. And I don't know you, I don't know where you are in the spectrum of your knowledge, so I'm going to give you just a little bit of homework. In the description below, you'll find a couple of subjects and a couple of links that I think might be helpful, so that way when Ron comes on the channel next week to teach you, you'll have a better learning experience and you won't be lost in the weeds. In the meantime though, I hope that you find the links helpful, I hope you do your homework, and I'll see you guys soon.